At 11 years old, he was sent away from home alone to a football academy in Lisbon, where nobody knew his name. He cried himself to sleep for weeks. He was smaller than the other boys, poorer than almost everyone around him, and he had a heart condition that doctors said might end his football career before it even began. Most people would have gone home. Cristiano Ronaldo stayed, and then he became the most decorated footballer in the history of the sport. But here is what nobody tells you about how that actually happened. It wasn't talent. It was a decision he made as a child in a dormitory in Lisbon, crying, and alone, that he was going to outwork every single person who ever doubted him. And he has never stopped making that decision, every single day, for over 30 years. What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to PsyWealth Richie. This is the channel where we break down the mindset and psychology behind the world's most successful and powerful people. Today, we're doing something a little different. We're stepping onto the pitch, because the psychology of the greatest footballer who ever lived has lessons that go far beyond sport. If you're new here, subscribe. Now let's talk about Ronaldo. Cristiano Ronaldo dos Santos Aveiro was born on February 5, 1985 in Funchal, Madeira, Portugal. He grew up in poverty. His father was an alcoholic who struggled his entire life and died when Ronaldo was just 20 years old. His family lived in a small house with barely enough room for everyone. His mother worked multiple jobs to keep the family fed. There was no safety net, no backup plan, no family dynasty to fall back on. Just a boy from a small island with an extraordinary gift and an even more extraordinary will to use it. He was diagnosed with a racing heart condition at 15 that required surgery. Doctors told him football might be over before it started. He had the surgery. He was back training within days. He said later, "I was never afraid of that moment. I just wanted to get back to work." That sentence, said by a 15-year-old recovering from heart surgery, tells you everything you need to know about who Cristiano Ronaldo is, psychologically. Here's the thing about Ronaldo that most people misunderstand. They look at his body, the 6% body fat, the extraordinary physical condition he maintains well into his late 30s, and they think genetics. They think natural ability. They think some people are just built differently. But Ronaldo's former teammates and coaches have consistently told a different story. They describe someone who stays after every training session, who works on his weaknesses obsessively, who studies his own performances in exhaustive detail, looking for anything that can be improved, who treats his body like a machine that requires precise maintenance, sleeping 10 hours a night, eating with extraordinary discipline, investing millions in recovery technology. He said, "Talent without work is nothing. I work harder than anyone." That is not arrogance. That is a psychological contract he made with himself, a commitment that his effort will always exceed what is required, always, without exception. And that commitment, sustained over 3 decades at the highest level of professional sport, is what produced the 5 Ballon d'Or awards, the multiple Champions League titles, the records that keep falling, even as he ages past the point where most players have long retired. Ronaldo said something once that I want you to really think about. He said, "I am not a perfectionist, but I like to feel that things are done well. More than that, I feel an endless need to learn, to improve, to evolve. Not only to please the coach and the fans, but to feel satisfied with myself." That last part is everything. Not only to please the coach and the fans, to feel satisfied with himself. That internal standard and that self-directed measure of excellence that exists independently of what anyone else thinks is what psychologists call intrinsic self-evaluation. And it is one of the most powerful psychological drivers of sustained peak performance that research has ever identified, because external validation is unreliable. Crowds cheer and then they boo. Coaches praise and then they criticize. Fans love you and then they question you. But the internal standard, the one you set for yourself and answer to yourself, that never disappears. That is always there. Always demanding, always pushing. Ronaldo answers to that standard every single day. And it is why he is still performing at the highest level of professional football at an age when the sport said he should be finished. Let me tell you about something that happened to Ronaldo that I think reveals his psychology more clearly than any of his victories. In 2004, Portugal hosted the European Championship. Ronaldo was 19 years old. Portugal reached the final, and they lost to Greece, one of the biggest upsets in tournament history. Ronaldo was photographed crying on the pitch, devastated, publicly, completely, and within 2 years he had led Portugal to the World Cup semifinals and become one of the most feared players on the planet. He said, "I don't care about the criticism. I just think about what I can do better." That response to failure, the turn inward, the focus on improvement rather than defense, is one of the most psychologically healthy and performance-enhancing responses to setback that exists. Most people respond to public failure by retreating, by protecting their ego, by finding reasons why the failure wasn't really their fault. Ronaldo responded by working harder, by identifying exactly what needed to improve, and by coming back better than before. Every single time, there is something Ronaldo does before every match that I find psychologically fascinating. He stands in front of the mirror, he looks at himself directly, and he reminds himself of who he is and what he is capable of. That is not vanity. That is a deliberate psychological priming technique. Research on self-affirmation consistently shows that the act of consciously connecting with your own values and capabilities before a high-pressure situation measurably improves performance. It reduces anxiety. It increases focus. It activates the parts of the brain associated with confidence and executive function. Ronaldo figured this out intuitively, long before any sports psychologist told him about it. He also visualizes, in extraordinary detail. He has described seeing himself scoring specific goals before they happen, feeling the movement in his body before he makes it, experiencing the success before it is real, and then going out and making it real. That combination between self-affirmation plus detailed visualization is one of the most powerful mental preparation frameworks in elite performance psychology, and Ronaldo uses it before every single match. And now I want to speak directly to you, because I think Ronaldo's psychology contains something that applies to every single person watching this, regardless of whether you have ever kicked a football in your life. Most people wait to feel confident before they act. They wait to feel ready before they begin. They wait for external validation, from coaches, from managers, from the people around them, before they fully commit to what they are capable of. Ronaldo does the opposite. He decides first. He commits first. He shows up at the highest standard first. And then the confidence follows the action rather than preceding it. He said, "Your love for what you do and the willingness to push yourself where others won't is what will make you exceptional." That is the whole philosophy in 2 sentences. Love what you do enough to push yourself past the point where most people stop. Because that point, the place where most people decide enough, is exactly where champions are made. You don't have to be a footballer to apply this. You don't have to be chasing trophies or records. You just have to identify the thing that matters most to you, the work that deserves your absolute bests, and then give it that consistently, without waiting for permission, without waiting to feel ready, without accepting the comfortable version of your own effort as sufficient, because it almost never is. And you already know that. Cristiano Ronaldo grew up with nothing, lost his father, had heart surgery at 15, cried alone in a dormitory as a child, and became the most decorated footballer in the history of the sport. Not because he was the most talented, but because he made a decision, over and over again for 30 years, that his effort would always exceed what was required, that his standard would always come from within, that failure would always become fuel, and that the version of himself he saw in the mirror every morning was worth every sacrifice it took to become. That is not a football story. That is a psychology lesson, one of the most powerful ones I know. Subscribe to PsyWealth Richie. Share this with someone who needs to remember what they are actually capable of. We will see you in the next one.